lot of the times we see people do everything on their own, and really you can do that for like 4 or 5 properties. So you need to hire that first person. And we get a ton of questions of, should we hire a virtual assistant or somebody local? When we hire a virtual assistant, should we use a service? Should we just go find somebody on our own on Fiverr or onlinejobs.ph? Should we get a specialized person just for revenue management? So really, I think the goal of today is to just answer all of those questions so you guys don't have to even think about it anymore. You're just like, all right, this is solved now. This problem that I've had or may have in the future is solved. So that's what we're going to tackle today. Chris, I know you prepped it all, so I'll let you take the reins.
Yeah, I'll share my screen. But guys, if you want to just post in the comments where you're at in that process, like how much experience you have with a VA, how many listings you might have, we're happy to give more personalized advice for you as well. But the real purpose of this, and Mike and I are fairly qualified here, we have 40 listings combined, probably 8 or 9, maybe more than that, 10 VAs that work for us combined. And I personally have used all 3 of these models. And so we want to go through what the different options are that are out there for you, because it's not a one size fits all, and why you might choose one or the other. And we have recommendations too. And we have a couple fun giveaways for you at the end, or at least fun in my mind. It's a 4R for you, as well as a contract, which you're going to need with a VA, just FYI. Depending on the hiring model you go with. So let's talk about the 3 different models here. You can see left to right, we have the agency model, the recruiting model, and self-hire. So the agency model, what you have to understand when you're hiring, especially overseas, is if you don't have a physical office at that location, it depends on country law, but with the Philippines, this is true. Unless you have a physical office there, you cannot have your virtual assistant be an employee. Therefore, they're going to be either a contractor or they're going to be employed with an agency, and they're going to be what's called an employer of record. And so that distinction is pretty important because it determines who you're contracting with, whether it's the agency or the VA themselves. Now, let's run through a few of these examples and why you might choose one over the other. So in the agency model, that's the most full service that's out there. You hire a firm that goes out and gets candidates for you. They recruit them, they present them to you, you hire one of them. And not only do they help you find the candidates, they also help onboard and retain that talent for a certain amount of time. They'll dictate that in the terms and conditions. What's really nice about this is it's like the training wheels of VA hiring, right? It's like us using Airbnb in the STR business. Like, they're doing so much for you, and they're going to hold your hand throughout the whole process. Now, of course, that means they're also going to be the most expensive. Usually it's a recurring cost every month that you pay. They're going to take a cut of that pay before they pay the VA. But you pay them and they pay the VA. That's generally how that works. This I have found, and it's what I did for years, is it's great to have an agency in place if you're a beginning leader, or you're a rising leader. You're trying to learn the leadership skills, how to manage people. And this is a new thing for you, especially hiring virtual assistants. Because what happens is you hire somebody, they don't work out, you fire them, you hire another person, they don't work out, you fire them, and you're like, man, these VAs suck. But more often than not, it's you. I'm just going to be blunt about it. It's probably you. It's your leadership skills, and you're not attracting the right talent. And so having an agency come alongside you and give you pointed feedback about what you could be doing better, and then also validating if they are not the right fit talent-wise as you onboard and look to retain them and grow their skills, that becomes super valuable to have alongside your own personal growth journey as a leader in this business. So I always recommend it for folks that are on the newer side or just starting out, or the first time they've hired somebody. I hear a lot of people saying, well, I can hire somebody on Upwork or, onlinejobs.ph for $4 an hour. And that's great. But the cost of turnover and hiring in general and onboarding new people all the time, because you don't have those SOPs in place and those procedures in place, is actually going to probably cost you more than if you just went to the agency to begin with. Before I move on to the recruiting model, anything else that you would want to maybe call out here, Mike, about how the agency model works?
No, man, I think you hit the spots, and this chart looks really, really solid too. So nothing I would add there.
Cool. And I'm not really touching on, we'll talk about this maybe after the three models, but the different types of virtual assistants you can hire for. So like in this business, for a GX specialist or a guest support specialist, we have a 4R for you for that role. That person is going to be monitoring messages all day long, talking to your cleaners, talking to your handy people. You probably don't want that person doing project-based work like revenue management or marketing, because that work is much more focus-based. And so those are generally two different roles. And we'll talk about like the different types of virtual assistants you can hire. But at the end of the day, anything that is behind a computer screen, you could hire a virtual assistant for, is how I generally think about it. The second way to go about virtual assistant hiring is the recruiting model. Okay, I touched on the self-hire, like you doing it yourself. Really good for seasoned folks in this industry, or folks that have a really strong pipeline in terms of recruiting, onboarding, retention, etc. Recruiting is fantastic though if you want to pay an upfront fee and not the recurring fee. You know, a lot of people get turned off by that recurring fee model where you're paying this agency again and again and again. And eventually you get so seasoned that you're like, why am I still paying that? And so recruiting is great when you have your talent management, the back end, really, really strong. Onboarding and retention is already in place. You've maybe led VAs before in the past. You just need really great candidates, and you don't want to spend a lot of time sifting through hundreds of applications. Recruiting models or recruiting firms are really good for those purposes. And they'll, just like the agency model, feed you really qualified candidates, but then it's on you after you hire the person to onboard and retain them the right way. So that's the difference between agency and recruiting. The costs are a little bit different. It's better for more intermediate seasoned professionals. And even today, we're actually hiring 3 right now. We're still using a recruiting model. I've done the self-hire, but I'm still working on my systems on the back end or on the front end, the recruiting side. And I'm much more comfortable, instead of building all that out myself, I'd rather just pay and get really qualified candidates, but just pay that fee once instead of on a recurring basis. And again, let us know like where you're at, and we'll point you in the right direction, because we've worked with all of them, guys. I've worked with multiple agencies, a recruiting firm. I've done Upwork. I've done online jobs PH. We'll point you in the right direction. So self-hire. Okay. When I think about the talent pipeline, you got sourcing candidates, interviewing, selection, onboarding, like professional growth and development and retention, and then offboarding. Like you got like 7 different pieces of the pipeline that you need to incorporate in your business eventually, but you're likely missing pieces. This is why self-hire I leave last, and leave it until you get your documents or your SOPs really, really dialed in, and you're a seasoned leader at this point. So it's obviously great because you control the whole pipeline, right? And you got to have your systems and your funnel dialed into the place where this makes a lot of sense. But there's a lot of advantages as well, in the sense that the cost is obviously cheaper. You have a lot more control over the overall process. It is the most cost effective and like total control way to go about it. But it's also a huge time investment. And this is why I typically like the recruiting model, is because I don't want to have to spend a ton of time sifting through hundreds of applications, like I mentioned. I'd rather just pay the fee, get the qualified candidate, and still have somebody in my back pocket to go back to and say, hey, like, you're the one that recruited this person. You tell me what you think, right? It's almost like 6 months ago, I hired a fractional talent officer. And I'm not saying that you guys need to go do that, but having somebody that understands the talent space is super, super helpful. So if you don't have those pieces in place, I would lean away from self-hire, but that's the self-hire route that I think a lot of people jump to early on before they consider some of these other considerations to hiring VAs.
100%. It's like the self-hire is obviously the cheapest, but you got to spend the most time on it as well. So like you're being cheap with your time and also being cheap with your money. So what happens is you typically get a cheap person, a cheap product, and then you don't have your systems dialed in. And then it's just like, you're like, virtual assistants don't work, which is not true. What I really like, I mean, I've used all 3 of these models. The recruiting model, in my opinion, is the best, because I don't want to sift through a bunch of applications. But The model I'm using now primarily is I only have A players that work for us, and A players know other A players. So whenever we have an opening or whenever we want to create a new position, because the team is leveling up, I say, all right, who do you know? Who do you guys know that would be a good fit in our culture and that we can teach them our systems? And it's not always like, we're not always hiring for skill set. A lot of the times we're just hiring for people that have drive, people that have goals. And typically, you know, if you have people on your team that are goal oriented, they know other people that are goal oriented too. And then we can develop them, teach them our systems, and then also manage that person as well and help manage and mentor that person that's being onboarded too, because they've already got a previous relationship. So one of the hacks that I've used or tricks that I've used is use an internal person that's an A player on your team to go out and hire somebody and then pay that person on your team a referral fee or pay them to manage that person. So, you know, if it's a guest services person that you're hiring for and you want to go find, or you want your person on your team, your A player, to go find one, tell them, hey, I'll pay you if you go find one. And also you'll manage them. So I'll give you a little bump in your salary as well. But this person has to work out and they have to meet these criterias. And, you know, I tell them too, like, whoever you hire is a reflection on you as well. So it's like, you really gotta, you know, I've referred people in previous jobs when I was working at corporate. I referred people in that didn't work out, and it was a reflection of me, right? It reflected me. So you really want to be careful if you are that person that's referring somebody in. So that, I think, is the best of both worlds, because they know the culture and you can typically save on cost as well.
Yeah, the only caveat to that, and I speak from experience here, and I didn't say that. That was probably the piece I was missing. This is a reflection on you. Mm-hmm. Is I found that some cultures, there's a collectiveness to it. And so they will stick together, which is great for team bonding, but they're hiring their friends, right? Instead of hiring for the skill and for the right culture fit, it's just, hey, it's a buddy of mine. So you do have to kind of set that expectation really clearly. And I got burned by that in the past. And so that's where I just want to add a little bit of caution, is you want to make sure you're setting those expectations really clearly, like you're talking about, Mike.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. I mean, I have had to let go my A player's best friend before. And my A player was like, look, I get it. Like, I'm not, you know, my relationship with him is, he's one of my best friends, but if he wasn't up to par and up to our brand, like, we're good. And you want diehards like that on your team. But Gavin had a question. So Gavin said, I've hired a lot of folks in person, but not virtual. Not a fan of the recruiting model because of the giant onboarding cost and no guarantee that the person will stay. So first of all, giant is relative. You know, Chris, what should somebody be paying for a recruiting fee?
Anywhere between $1,000, $2,000 for virtual.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
It's going to be quite a bit higher for stateside. It's usually like 1% of their salary. Mm-hmm. But also to that concern of, well, what if they don't work out? That's valid. However, the payback period on 1,000 to 2,000 versus the agency model is like 3 or 4 months generally. So it's pretty short. And the second thing is you can typically add to the contract with the recruiter that if it doesn't work out, that they're, you know, within 90 days, they're willing to go back out and source another one for you for free. So there's a couple of ways to kind of combat that and just think that through. Yeah.
I mean, there should be, in my opinion, 6 months. You know, there should be a 6-month period. If you got to fire them within 6 months, they'll go out and find somebody else. And what I've found is, like, if that does happen, Gavin, you can negotiate with them. You know, let's say you're outside that 90 days, you're outside that 6 months. If you go back to them and say, hey, look, this didn't work out for XYZ reasons, can you go find me another person? A lot of times they're not going to charge you that onboarding fee, right? Because they want to keep you as a customer. They want you to bring more clients to you. They want you to refer. Because a lot of times these businesses, at least from what I've seen, are referral based. You know, they're not, you know, really the only person that I see in our industry that is running ads and stuff like that is Somewhere. somewhere.com, I think somewhere.com, anywhere.com, Nick Huber's company. So that's, and then he did say an agency will provide a butt in the seat for a predictable cost. I mean, that's 100%. I agree with that. Agency model is very good.
Yeah. Yep. Any other questions out there right now, Mike?
Don't see any other questions. If you guys have questions, feel free to put them in the comments. Whether you're hiring your first or another thing that I hear a lot about is hiring for a specialty. So, I hear people saying, hey, I need to hire somebody for my social media, to do more marketing content. I think that's one of the biggest that I've heard. Or same thing, I need to hire, I don't like revenue management, so I want to hire for revenue management. What advice do you typically give for those two types of specialty hires?
Yeah, one, separate the roles. Like there's generalists and there's specialists called T-skills, either wide or very deep. And so for revenue management, for marketing, we like to hire for the specialists, the revenue manager or the marketing expert. Now, what we do is, because we're 24/7, we'll have those people work daytime for them, but overnight for us. They're still going to be the only point person overnight, and they'll be monitoring messages or phone calls. So they'll still be responsible for answering those. But their main focus, again, from midnight to 6 a.m. or whatever, it's going to be fully that project task. So it allows them to focus, get it done. And we like to create some overlap with our stateside folks, whoever they're reporting to. So they'll work from midnight to 12 p.m. And that morning time is when they get to meet with their supervisor about any of the work that they're doing. So revenue management, they might have a pricing meeting with our growth manager, and they'll review the work that was done, any issues, and the supervisor will be able to give them feedback then. So they don't feel like they're on an island the whole time. But it also gives us some bandwidth on the guest support side if a emergency phone call comes in at 2:00 in the morning.
Mm-hmm. On the marketing side too, I see a lot of people ask or say, hey, I want to hire somebody to help me with my social media, that sort of thing too. But you need to have brand standards, and you need to have a plan for them to come in and execute. You're very rarely are you going to have somebody that's going to come in and be the visionary for your marketing department and tell you, hey, you need to put out this type of content, or we need to put out this type of content. There needs to be some sort of bones structure in place for them to go execute on. A lot of times they can push buttons on, the when to post and how many posts, and they can probably use ChatGPT to do some stuff. They can create some stuff in Canva, but the framework or the plan typically needs to be created by you. And if you don't have that framework, you should probably go invest in somebody else's framework. We have a framework at SDR Secrets for how you should promote your management company and really promote your brand. And a lot of times when you're first starting out, your brand is you. Your brand's not Seacoast Vacation Rentals, or Seacoast to Peak. It's not, and your brand is not NC Stays, right? It's not, the brand is me. All right. It's me and what we provide for our clients. And so it's getting that message out there more, not always about the A-frame that we've got in our portfolio, right? Because you're not going to get a whole lot of bookings unless you partner with an influencer or somebody like that will help you, create content for those properties. You need to be the one creating the content, and then have that person edit the photos, edit the videos, create the post, that sort of thing. That's really what you're going to get from a marketing VA versus, coming in and creating the strategy for you.
100%.
And then on the revenue management side too, same thing. Revenue management it's an art. There's science to it. Obviously, it's a lot of numbers, but there's an art of figuring out what is going on in the markets and reading that science, and then making judgments based on past data and current data. That is not a science right now. So you're not going to get a VA that, you can pay $1,200 a month to come in and just immediately make you more money. It's really not going to happen. You're going to have to create that strategy with them, and then give them some tutelage, have them listen to this podcast, have them be in other Facebook groups that focus on, revenue management, in order to learn and make changes on your behalf, and take ownership of that, sector of the business too. What are you doing for revenue management right now?
My growth manager does it. I trained him up originally. He took it over. We've grown to the point where he needs help. And so actually tomorrow we have final interviews with the second candidate to be that revenue manager assistant. And so they're going to be that person that works midnight to 12 p.m. They'll do all the legwork and go market by market. Probably tackling like 10 to 15 listings a day. Report that up to the supervisor, my growth manager, and then any issues or big KPIs, those get reported to us in our L10 meeting, which is like a weekly leadership call.
Mm-hmm. Which, guys, we've done a training on that and what Chris's org chart looks like. It was an awesome training. It was probably like two, three months ago. It was the org chart, but then it was also what are the key like leadership, pillars really in that training of how to incentivize your people to all row the boat in the same direction. Because you have over 100 properties now, right?
We hired a third full-time employee this past Monday. They started our cleaning manager. We'll have a fourth in a couple of weeks. And then we'll have 7 virtual assistants. And then, by the end of the month. Yep.
So if you guys missed out on that training, just drop leadership in the comments and we'll tag you in that training or send it to you. And said, what exactly is a revenue manager? Do they do pricing? Yes. So, they'll use price labs to look at the market and figure out if you're priced appropriately. And then also a big misconception of revenue management is, tinkering with pricing on a daily basis. It's ultimately, how do you get the max out of your property, out of each property? And I like to look at it of every property has a goal for every month and a target that we're trying to hit. Now, the job of the revenue manager is to hit those targets. I don't care how he hits them, but hit them or exceed them so that we can, obviously hit our pro formas, but then also the homeowners that we work with, have them hit their performance too and be able to make money on their properties as well. So that's what a revenue manager primary responsibility is. Let us know if you have any more questions, guys. If not, it's a beautiful day out here. I don't know, Chris, Thursdays are usually your golf days, right?
Yeah, not today. It's been raining all week here, but it is a little nicer. But I put that aside so we could do this chat. The one bonus that I want to give you guys is we do have a independent contractor agreement that we want to share. It's something that you want to keep in mind. With an agency, they're going to send you probably a contract. With a recruiting firm, and if you do a self-hire, then you're really on the hook for creating that contract with the person that you're hiring. So we want to give that template away so you can leverage that. It highlights the sections where you just got to edit it and some of the responsibilities in there to make it clear. But that'll be nice to have just back pocket when you guys are ready to get going. Yeah.
So if you guys want that, just drop contract in the comments and I'll make sure you get a hold of that as well. Because ultimately, that's what you want between yourself and whoever you're working with. So they know the roles, responsibilities, and then also the terms of that contract together. Well, appreciate everyone's time. I hope this was helpful for you guys. If you guys have any other trainings you want us to do, just drop them in the comments or send me a message on Facebook. And everybody that reached out or commented leadership or contract will be in touch. And have a great week, everybody. And we'll see you guys next week.